IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money Upfront. We're still in lockdown and we're trying our best to make our releases work, but we are occasionally getting a little late or slipping on some episodes. Hope that you guys continue to remain patient with us. Check out our social media accounts. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're doing something over there called the IVM Smart Guide. A bunch of our hosts are talking about things to do during the lockdown, books, movies, podcasts, etc. Check it out. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And let's get you onto your show right now.
You've tuned into a show called Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch and you were expecting a spoiler-free episode. So there are many spoilers on this episode. Kripya dhyan dijiye. Hello and welcome. You've tuned into a brand new episode of Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch. I, of course, am Mrs. Binge-Watch, also known as Janice Sequeira, at JaniceSec85 on all social media platforms because plugging must be done right up front on top. And with me, of course, is the man they call my husband, but mostly behaves like my boyfriend and part-time lover and part-time living partner. At Aniruddha, at Aniguha on all social media platforms, guys. Please go follow us because followers की जरूरत है.
ये नॉर्मल हम लोग एपिसोड के एंड पे करते हैं, but हमने सोचा लॉकडाउन टाइम है तो why not do it at the beginning?
Yeah, because
not like there is any connection between the two, but why the hell not?
Because all rules have changed, okay, guys? I mean, did you ever think that we'd be recording these episodes from our home? But here we are recording it on our iPhone, and you guys are even bothering to listen to it. Ha ha ha! Jokes on you.
And we're sitting on the bed. This is like the best recording of a podcast ever. We are sitting in our bed. Janice has made amazing coffee, which the both of us are sipping on. And this is just like the best way to do any work ever.
This is not to say that I don't like the IVM coffee. The IVM filter coffee is also very good. I mean the actual filter coffee, not the podcast. But yeah, I think my coffee is better.
Okay, I wasn't making any comparisons with the IVM coffee. That wasn't the point of this. But yeah, so essentially Janice and I have not been, unlike what a lot of you must be thinking, we aren't exactly been a binge-watching couple ever since the lockdown began. We've just been busy doing a lot of other stuff, work, of course, household chores. We spoke about this last time.
Yeah, we've joined the BJP.
So we don't want to repeat that. Janice, there's some PJ coming, right?
Yeah. Bhartan, Jhadu, Pocha.
That's it.
That's not even my joke, guys.
Then
That's
that
not
means it's BJPP because there needs to be a party in the end.
No.
So we are like Bartan, Jhadu, Pocha party.
We are BJPP.
Yeah, exactly. But
it's not even my joke, guys. It's a WhatsApp joke. I'm so sorry.
Can we never repeat that again? But essentially, yeah, let's just do a quick count, Janice, of all the stuff we've watched ever since the lockdown began. And you'll realize that it's not really too much. All right, so we've got what we call our lunch and dinner show, which is basically that one show which is not longer than 20 minutes, which we watch like seasons and seasons of only during meals because they're like quick bites of entertainment. And currently that is Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, even though you are about 8 episodes behind me. But yeah, that show is
but
Schitt's
essentially,
Creek.
So Schitt's Creek is a show that we watch like on a daily basis for weeks on end. Yeah. Apart from that, if you talk about real binge-watching shows, we've not really binge-watched a lot, right? So we've watched, I'll tell you exactly what we've binge-watched. We've binge-watched 2 seasons of F1, Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
We binge-watched The Test, which we spoke about in our last episode, which is the documentary on the Australian cricket team. We have watched the new season of Ozark.
Correct, season 3.
And of course, we watched Money Heist.
Yeah, I actually ended up watching about 2.5 seasons of Money Heist because, yes, I hadn't watched the last 1.5 seasons, so I was catching up.
Yeah, but that's like 5 shows over a month. It's really not a lot when you think about it because a lot of these, like for example, an Ozark or a Money Heist, we started on like a Friday and finished on a Sunday.
Yeah,
right?
Actually we watch most of the stuff on the weekend because Monday to Friday, guys, hamari lagi padi hai. Like we're not even joking about it. Like there is so much work from morning to night because you wake up and there's household cleaning chores. Then you do breakfast, then you do lunch, then you again cook or we do our work. And the evenings again, we're writing. Aniruddha is writing, I'm editing, uploading. So there's actually been more work than normal. I mean, this has been the hardest we've worked in a while.
Yeah, so essentially we've not been watching a lot, but I'm assuming that some of you might be finding more time to binge watch stuff. But the show that we are going to be talking about today is basically the only other show we've watched apart from the ones that we mentioned earlier. This one is on Amazon Prime. It's an Indian show. It's called Panchayat. It's been created by TVF, which of course has a history of having created some really good original content over the years. In fact, before the big digital content boom happened with Amazon, Netflix, Hotstar, it was really TVF who started, investing money and time into original content, whether it was Permanent Roommates or Pictures. Clearly now what's happening is that they are being able to pitch their stuff to other streaming services, and hence I'm assuming that the ambition of their storytelling is growing as well. Not that Panchayat is a show that requires a massive scale or any of that. It's a very simple, nice show. But it's just nice to be able to watch a TVF show easily on Amazon. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the TVF app. In the past, whenever I've tried to watch something on the app, both Janice and I have struggled. In fact, the only time we saw an entire TVF show in recent times was when Ye Meri Family landed up on Netflix.
Yeah.
So it's a good, I'm glad. I mean, I'm sure TVF has fans that catch their shows purely on the app because, they don't necessarily subscribe to a Netflix or Amazon. But we are happy to be watching their shows on streaming services that we are already familiar with.
Yeah. And Panchayat is a very interesting show. I mean, like Aniruddha said, the scale isn't very large and it's not a very ambitious show or trying to tell you something extraordinary. In fact, it's a very simple show. The cast, of course, is Raghubir Yadav, Neena, Gupta, Jitendra, Kumar, and it's set in a small village in UP. It's a very simple show about this guy, Jitendra Kumar, who, because he doesn't do very well in his exams and doesn't score grades, does not have the capacity to go and get a really big job. He settles for becoming the secretary of a panchayat in a small village in Uttar Pradesh.
Yeah, because that's a government posting.
It's a government posting. So he's been sent there by the government to be a secretary of this panchayat. Raghubir Yadav is the pradhan. But actually, once you start watching the show, you realize that it's Neena Gupta who's the pradhan. But because of the patriarchy system, it's Raghubir Yadav who's running the show over there. And of course, along with
Pradhan essentially means the top person in the panchayat, like some sort of a sarpanch.
Like a head of
but
the
an
village.
Elected representative of the village. There's a very interesting thing in the first episode where he basically thinks like the name of the pradhan that he's been told is that of a woman. And it's a man who ends up meeting him, greeting him. And he asks what the confusion is all about. And he's basically made to realize that the government basically came up with this scheme where women, a certain percentage of women in the villages were eligible for elections, which does not happen, which is not common in a lot of villages. As a result of which the character of Neena Gupta basically stood for elections purely because she wanted to tick that box of being a woman sort of a pradhan. But it's really the plan always was that the husband Raghubir Yadav would be running the show. It's a nice little, what I like about the show is that it's very rooted and it's not trying to make statements. It is just showing things as they are.
Yeah.
It's not trying to be a statement about, okay, that was Audrey doing her little meow. This is going to happen. We are going to have some ambient noises in the form of our cats. That never happens in the studio. But basically, like, for example, something like, it's not trying to force down themes like patriarchy or the, imbalance in income between people, even, within a village setup or the class difference. These are all aspects of the story, but they have just been woven in a very organic manner without bringing too much attention to them. So it's not like there is any preaching happening. It's just part of the DNA of the world that the show is set in. And I really like that about the show.
I don't think, it's been a really long time since any of us have watched a show that's been set so firmly in the heartland. And it's, for me, what was so interesting was that episode after episode, this guy, Jitendra Kumar, his character, Abhishek Tripathi, is so frustrated with the village he's been posted in, their simpleton way of living, their traditions, their rituals, and what we consider their backward ways. But episode after episode, without necessarily being preachy, the show tells us that actually people living in the heartland or people living in smaller towns and villages actually may have a better take on life and more common sense than the ones of us who live in cities and in big houses. Because it's such simple things that they do in terms of narration, in terms of, just instances within the show that I mean, there's no way. I think by the time I finished watching the series, I had a newfound respect for characters and for people who have so little and yet are able to do so much with their lives.
Yeah, and also when you talk about Heartland shows or stories set in the Heartland, we are so used to seeing crime stories set in the Heartland.
Yeah.
Or, like gangster and cop stories set in the Heartland. You almost never get to see just regular people. And obviously, the first idea or a movie that comes to mind when you see the city-bred guy entering the village is Swades. Because, that was like the quintessential urban-rural sort of a divide movie that Bollywood came out with. And they're so smart that they refer to the film straight away in the first episode.
Yeah.
Where basically Jitendra's character is referred to as, "Arey tu zyada Mohan Bhargav banne ki zarurat nahi hai tujhe."
Kaisa chal raha hai tera Swades?
In that sense, they've kept it very self-referential in that sense, which is nice. They've brushed away that comparison at the very beginning. I also got like a Malgudi Days vibe in the beginning, where I felt like, it might be one of those Tales from the Heartland episode. And it has that quality in the sense that while there is a running thread of this secretary who's trying to pass his cat. And is sort of unhappy and getting used to the village life. There is that chapter-wise element to the show where every episode is in a way a different story or a new adventure. So in that sense, it might seem a bit like Malgudi Days, but actually it's a lot more. It has its own identity, right? Panchayat is not a show that is necessarily seeking inspiration beyond a point. It's keeping things very original, very fresh, which is very nice.
I think, the victory of any show these days is, there are only two ways for us to know whether a show has really made a great impact, right? One is if the storytelling is so interesting and so unique that you're like, wow, that blew my mind. The other thing for me more and more is that after you finish watching a show, how many characters do you remember?
Correct.
And how many characters stay with you? Like, for example, Aniruddha and I spoke about, we've been discussing how Pushpavali, the new season, had a similar impact where I might not necessarily remember all the plot points, but I remember all the characters from Pushpavali a long time after I watched the show. The same thing happened to me with Panchayat, where I felt like Abhishek Tripathi, Jitendra Kumar, who by the way is spot on. Aniruddha and I kept looking at each other, even in the moments where you think he's going to let go of being this frustrated young man, he's so good.
Yeah, he's always in
character.
And he's also been pitted with some really heavyweight actors, right?
Yeah,
Both Raghubir Yadav and Neena Gupta are veterans and they are fantastic with what they do.
Even the actors who play Vikas, Chandan Roy, and Prahlad, who I think is Faisal Malik.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, even those actors, Faisal Malik, of course, who plays Prahlad, is the deputy Pradhan. So, he's like Raghubir Yadav's second in command. And Vikas is sort of like Jitendra Kumar's secretary almost, or like, the assistant in the office.
Yeah, like a sort of a sidekick.
Like
which
a
is
sidekick.
Nice.
And they all bring in like a little touch to their, characters. Vikas plays he knows that Abhishek Tripathi, Jitendra Kumar's character, is constantly frustrated and angry. He's constantly trying to make up for him and soften the blow when he comes across as rude. Prahlad is your village, sort of jolly simpleton who's just interested in small things like, oh, mera chehra ek banner pe hai, kya wo आप main road पे लगा सकते हो. Like, it's about small joys. And I feel like these characters stayed with me for a really long time. I was a little, while watching the show, I constantly kept thinking कि Neena Gupta का क्या काम है इस show पे, because she doesn't have that much to do in comparison to the four men.
No, actually, this is I was thinking about it. In any other setting, we would find it odd that this is a show which has men in every frame of the show, right? There are actually, you don't see women even in like large gatherings. This is a show about men, and the only female character is Neena Gupta, and the only time we see her is when we enter Raghubir Yadav's space, which is his home. So it's not like she's a character you see in a space outside of her house ever. But I think that's very deliberate. They are trying to almost reflect what the system is like in villages where women are actually, absolutely not to be seen. So, for example, if there are scenes among officers of the village, they are just like men. Or it's these 4 men played by Raghubir Yadav, Faisal Malik, Chandan Roy and Jitendra, Kumar. They are the only 4 characters we see scene after scene after scene. These are the main characters. I think it's very deliberate because especially in a story like this where you are showing that a man has taken over the position of a woman, where it's really the woman who's supposed to be calling the shots, is very self-explanatory, right?
But I think what they do very smartly is that it is the final episode. The final episode sort of, they do a complete, like it's almost like answering the audience's questions about a lot of things. About Neena Gupta allowing her husband to take away her position and her sort of control over the village. About how the post of Pradhan for women was created for women, yes, but with the understanding that men, their husbands, would work with them to help them understand and overcome the patriarchal rule that has, existed in villages for so long. And that final episode, where, it's all about Neena Gupta and her overcoming certain things that she needs to overcome and learn in a very quick time to be able to justify certain things. That episode is beautifully done. For me, hands down, I feel like that entire episode was the episode of the season. Even though just before that, there are many, many moments in the show that you do feel like, wow. For example, when the 4 of them get together to drink.
Yeah, I think overall each episode is very nicely written. The first episode is extremely funny, and I think it's the funniest episode of the season. And I think they've deliberately kept it comical because it's almost like you're seeing an outsider's perspective of how things are in a village. And you're also trying to draw audiences in, so you kept it funnier than the rest. And then episode 2 onwards, I think the effort to be funny is lesser, but a lot of it is just funny by default.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with just the outstanding ensemble. The acting is just through the roof. Like every week, for example, Janice and I do the scene stealer of the show. And I was thinking about it, and I can at least think of 3 scene stealers, and there are like 5 actors on the entire show. But that's the level of performance. I mean, Raghubir Yadav, who's just one of the greatest actors to have come out of Indian cinema, who's been around for ages, has done so many big and small roles. He's got a chance to really dig his role. And, we've spoken about this in the past. Whenever we discuss the Indian shows, we talk about how great actors are now getting to come onto the forefront, whether it's a Pankaj Tripathi or a Manoj Bajpayee. It's nice that an actor like Raghubir Yadav, who of course gets decentish roles in movies, is now getting to sort of be on screen for 8 hours and really do his thing. And he's fantastic.
Also I like the fact that, it's not just now about commercial, glossy looking actors.
That's fine. That's a different conversation altogether. What I'm trying to say is that good actors who were playing bit parts in movies are now getting to play slightly more, they're getting meatier roles.
Yeah, like I think Pankaj Tripathi must be the busiest sort of actor right now.
Because
between lead roles and smaller character roles. And
whether it's Pankaj Tripathi in Mirzapur or Manoj Bajpayee in Family Man, those are all examples. So, but I'm saying that Raghubir Yadav is outstanding. He's so good, it's amazing. I mean, he could just be saying the simplest line to a person which is not supposed to have any kind of weightage or gravity or anything, but he just says it in a manner that makes it so much more important than it actually is. Neena Gupta is outstanding in such a small role. She almost comes for a scene per episode, maybe more than once or twice, but every time she's there, she just brings the whole story alive. And her and Raghubir Yadav's scenes are just fantastic. You were talking about Chandan Roy, who plays Vikas. He's such a great actor. And he's just like, when you say scene stealer of the show, he's almost for me the find of the show. And even Jitendra Kumar, who actually has the least likable role of the lot. But like you said, he's so in character, it's astounding. It's almost like, I was quite surprised to see it because, of course, we've seen him play Jitu on other TVF shows and skits, and he's always very good. But to be able to really stand up to actors like Neena Gupta and Raghubir Yadav and to stay in character at the same time is remarkable. And I think that's what makes him work. He's such a stubborn guy that he always is that guy irrespective of what the situation is around him. And I like that. It's almost like he has no arc. It's not like he is going to have some eureka or epiphany or anything by the end of the season. He still possibly hates the village as much as he hated it the first time he entered it. It's just that he is now a lot more tolerating of the situation than he was before.
I also think, so Scene Stealers, of course, it's, I think, all of the cast. Because you can't really fault any of the actors. And I think they've also all been given their own moments to shine.
Yeah, but if I had to pick one, I would have said Raghubir Yadav. Because he's just Raghubir Yadav, just seeing him on screen was just so good for me.
I'm going to pick Neena Gupta. Because I feel like that finale episode, that one thing.
Yeah, she's
when
fantastic.
She has to sing that one thing. Oh my God, I had goosebumps watching that entire scene. What about wow moment? Like, what was your wow moment?
I think what you've already mentioned it's slightly spoilery, so I don't want to, spoil it for viewers. But there's a moment in the finale which is excellent, and that's completely Neena Gupta's moment, and I think that is for me the wow moment of the show.
I also this one particular moment stayed in my head for a very long time, which is there's an episode where this villager comes in to register his son's name. And there's a debate suddenly that goes on in the office about how the name of the son is very old school. And then they ask Abhishek Tripathi, who's the guy from the city, कि आप कोई modern name suggest कीजिए ना.
Yeah.
And he ends up suggesting Arav, which is Akshay Kumar's son's name. And that becomes a selling point for the name, wherein it leads to a fight in the family. It's a hilarious
It's really
episode.
funny because in that, basically the mother wants the son's name to be Atmaram. And the father is now fixated with the name Arav because Akshay Kumar's son has the same name. So the moment he finds out कि Akshay Kumar के बेटे का नाम Arav है तो मेरे बेटे का नाम भी Arav होना चाहिए. And the wife basically puts him in place saying कि बेटे का नाम Arav रखने से तुम अक्षय कुमार नहीं बन जाओगे. So that's like a really nice funny thing, and I like that's an example of the kind of topics that the show deals with, which are like very basic, simple. But at the same time, they're very entertaining at the same time. So on the Binge-o-meter, I would actually say Panchayat is like delicious, light khichdi. It's easy on the palate. It's comfort food. You don't really tire of it, and you can probably go back to it a day after as well and still enjoy it. But it's still delicious at the same time. Yeah. And also, of course, it's desi as hell.
That's right. So that was Aniruddha and me talking about Amazon Prime's Panchayat, TVF's Panchayat, a show that we absolutely love and we highly recommend. If you want to follow Aniruddha and me and our opinions and reviews on other shows and movies, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Janisek85. Aniruddha is at Aniguha on all platforms. And of course, if you want to listen to similar podcasts like these, go to the ivmpodcast.com or at IVM Podcast on all social media. We'll continue to send you these episodes from home. So hopefully you'll tune back in next week as well. Until then.
You can also go back and check earlier episodes where we've spoken about Indian shows we love. Panchayat is the latest addition to that list.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel, one story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday.
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!